fill in for him as he's not feeling well. So I'll do my best. I will relate a story from Hari Sauri's book that's applicable to the story that was scheduled. But let's start with the little Jaya Radha Madhava, which Prabhupada always sang before his giving his classes. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Givaridhari Yasoda Nandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Apna bolo Hare Krishna Mahamantra Gaya koro Por favor, cantador y bailar. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you very much. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Today I was asked to talk about the subject of Choda Haridas. And Chota Haridas was banished from the company of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is in the Antya-lila of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So, Chota Haridas was in the renounced order of life, and he had some contact with a woman that Lord Chaitanya did not approve of. So Lord Chaitanya banished Chota Haridas from his association. Chota Haridas felt like it would be better to die than to live without Lord Chaitanya's association. So he chose to end his life in the Ganga. There's a lot of... it's not unusual in the Chaitanya Charitamrita for somebody to threaten to end their life. But it is unusual if somebody actually does it. So in this case, it took place. Chota Haridas, he drowned himself in the Ganga due to separation from Lord Chaitanya. When Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was informed what Chota Haridas had done, the Lord simply replied, all of us get the results of our fruitive activities. Meaning that it was all under the control of the Lord. Then, according to what we do and what we think and how we perform our life, we get resultant action. In the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. So Haridas Thakur came back as he went to Gandharva Loka, and that was where he went after leaving his body, and he became a demigod. So he used to sing songs for Lord Chaitanya about Krishna in the form of a Gandharva. So he ended up getting Lord Chaitanya's association after leaving his body and becoming a resident of the Gandharva Loka, which is a heavenly planet, and the people there are famous for their singing. So, as Prabhu mentioned, I was on the Radha Damodar party, which is fairly famous. Anybody here has ever heard of the Radha Damodar Traveling Sankirtan party? Many of you. The Radha Damodar Traveling Sankirtan party goes back to the year 1967, when Srila Prabhupada had come to New York and he opened up the temple in New York, and then Prabhupada wanted to expand to California, which was a good way to, if you're going to spread Krishna consciousness all over America, if you have a center in New York and then you have a center in California, well, then you cover the whole country in one step. Kind of like Vamanadev took 3 steps. So Prabhupada took one big step from New York to California. First, the idea of opening a temple in California came from Mukunda Maharaj. Mukunda Maharaj had some business in California, and he was going to use it as a stepping stone to go to India. So he told Srila Prabhupada, he said, Swamiji, my wife and I are going to go out to California, and then I'm going to go off to India from there. And Prabhupada said, as he was going out the door, see if you can open up a center in California. So Mukunda Maharaj and his wife Janaki, they traveled and they went to Oregon. Oregon's the country where I'm from. And they met Shama Sundar and Malati, who were living as forest rangers. In Oregon, there's a lot of forest. It's mountainous, and it's a very beautiful place. Nice during the summer. People go there for holidays. It looks a lot like Germany. And Shama Sundar was living in a tower with Malati, and they used to look over the forest, and his job was if he saw a fire get started, then he would report it to the fire department, and they would extinguish it. So Mukunda and Janaki, they arrived at that tower in the forest and convinced Shama Sundar and his wife to come to California and see if they could open a temple in San Francisco. So Srila Prabhupada, he had given the formula about how to open a temple. The success was Harinam. One time, after Prabhupada opened so many temples, his godbrother, Krishnadas Babaji, Ban Maharaj, and Srila Prabhupada were sitting together and having a discussion. And the question came up, why did Ban Maharaj go to England for 3 years and nothing really happened? And Prabhupada went to America, and within 1 year, he was able to begin the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Within 10 years, he had 108 temples, and, well, we're all here today. So Prabhupada had great success. It's really enlivening, actually, just to see so many new devotees. I'm happy that the parampara didn't finish with Srila Prabhupada. He's represented by so many grand disciples. There's so many thousands of people coming to Prabhupada's movement nowadays. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness is the only organization that His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada is the center of. That's our unique contribution of ISKCON. So Prabhupada had inspired Mukunda Maharaj to go on this trip to California. And so in the discussion, Ban Maharaj and Prabhupada were sitting there, and Krishnadas Babaji, he gave his assessment, was that the reason Srila Prabhupada was successful was because he had faith in the holy name of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And Srila Prabhupada also said that he was trying to start ISKCON by giving lectures. We see a picture of Prabhupada in Butler, Pennsylvania in 1965, holding the Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada spoke in university, in the YMCA, in churches, and he was giving lectures, but he found that it was much more effective to go out and perform Harinam Sankirtan and chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra in public, like Lord Chaitanya did. When Srila Prabhupada, he had the first Harinam party in New York. And first he went to Washington Square Park, and then the next time he moved the Harinam party to Thompson Square Park. At Thompson Square Park, we see that was filmed. So there's the film of Srila Prabhupada in Thompson Square Park chanting Hare Krishna, and reporters came and saw this and reported it in the New York Times. So in 1966, there was an article in the New York Times that said Swami sings Hare Krishna to his flock Flock meaning like if you have a flock of birds, they hang out together. So there was this little group that was following Prabhupada. When Prabhupada saw this newspaper article in New York Times, he said, "This is the beginning of our movement. Now we've made an impression." And another man was a record producer, and he liked the Kirtan when he saw the Kirtan, so he invited Srila Prabhupada to his studio to make a recording called the Happening Album. He made that record, and it's interesting, it was the first recording of Srila Prabhupada doing Kirtan, and it's still the best one. It's the one they play on the little box. If you have a little Hare Krishna box that goes, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We've all heard that, right? Well, that recording was the first recording. It was a record. And they play it here right after Srimad Bhagavatam class inside Radhamadhava's temple. They play that record. That record made its way into books, into record shops, including the one in London, England. So, what will become a related event in this story, George Harrison and John Lennon of the Beatles, they purchased the record of Srila Prabhupada singing the Hare Krishna Mahamantra in 1967. And once they listened to it, they started chanting Hare Krishna. George Harrison described that they were on a ship in the Mediterranean, and they had a little portable record player, and they played Prabhupada chanting, and they started chanting with the mantra, and they chanted for hours. So they played guitars and chanted Hare Krishna Mahamantra in 1967, and this was from this record that Prabhupada had made, which came because Prabhupada went on Harinam. So, also in 1967, the devotees arrived in San Francisco and began a temple by performing Harinam. They went to Golden Gate Park and started singing the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and people became immediately attracted and started chanting. And then they invited Srila Prabhupada to come to San Francisco. So Shama Sundar, he organized some of the biggest musical acts of the time. Janis Joplin, the Grateful Dead, and Moby Dick. Moby Dick wasn't really that big, actually. But Janis Joplin and the Grateful Dead were very famous. So, actually it wasn't Moby Dick, it was Moby Grape. But they are a kind of an obscure band. But these other two these Janis Joplin and the Grateful Dead were two of the biggest personalities in the music industry throughout all of America and actually throughout the whole world. So they agreed to play and let all the money that came from the concert go to the temple. And Srila Prabhupada would be the guest of honor at this concert. So in January 1967, the Family Dog Auditorium was filled with hundreds of people. It was so packed you couldn't get a cat in there. It was just completely, I saw the picture, that it was stuffed. It was like Mangal Artik here in Mayapur on Gaur-Purnima. So it was completely full of people, and when Janis Joplin was singing her last song, Srila Prabhupada entered into the building. Everybody parted and let Prabhupada come on up to the stage. He was introduced by a poet named Allen Ginsberg. And Srila Prabhupada, he sat down and he introduced the people of California to the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And Srila Prabhupada started chanting, and then everybody got up and started dancing. And then the band, the Grateful Dead, got up on the stage and picked up their instruments and started playing with Srila Prabhupada. And this event brought Krishna consciousness to California in a big way in a short time, in one night. So then they had Rath Yatra. They had all the people who lived in San Francisco were coming to the park and they were chanting. And the devotees started serving prasadam. Jayananda Prabhu, and they were serving prasadam to 150 to 200 plates a day of ecstatic prasadam, everything cooked in ghee. Srila Prabhupada taught them how to make nice prasadam. That was very much appreciated. And a lot of the people who came to San Francisco, they didn't really have a plan of exactly how they were going to eat. So Prabhupada, he brought the prasadam and some other things into what became known as a summer of love. So Srila Prabhupada, he was the one who actually created the summer of love. He brought the flowers, what they called flower power. Prabhupada brought japa beads. They became called, the people called them love beads. And Prabhupada brought Rath Yatra, prasadam, vegetarianism, and the love of Krishna. Prabhupada brought love of Krishna, bhakti yoga, the yoga of divine love. So it became very popular very quickly. And then there was more records made, and then devotees, from San Francisco, they started making temples, other places, just by doing this simple formula. You go to a city, you do Harinam, distribute prasadam and books, give lectures, and teach people how to chant. And then they would join and become brahmacharis, brahmacharinis. There wasn't really any other ashram at that time, but so many people joined ISKCON. So Prabhupada was invited to a place called Morning Star Ranch, where people were trying to live off in the country, an alternative lifestyle, living off the food that they could grow, and tried to have a self-sufficient farm community. So Srila Prabhupada went there, and he met somebody that had been kind of around the devotees already. His name was Tamal Krishna Goswami. And another person was Vishnujana Swami. And there was another devotee from that farm called Madhavisha Swami. And there was some Matajis also. There was about 5 or 6 people who lived on this Morning Star farm. When they met Prabhupada, then they decided to join ISKCON. Tamal Krishna Maharaj had already met Srila Prabhupada briefly about a month before that. Prabhupada, the devotees hired a pavilion, a place for Prabhupada to speak, and in San Francisco. And it was for like 300 people, but the devotees didn't ask people to pay. Actually, they would have gotten a lot more response if they had people pay a little something. But it was advertised as being for free. So just like if you give away books for free, a lot of times if you give something for free, people think there's something wrong with it. It's actually, a lot of times it's better preaching to actually ask for some money for something, because then people will, if they give some money, like if they buy a book, they'll think, what did I buy? If you just give them the book for free, then there's a tendency to not take it very seriously. So they had this big hall, this auditorium. They offered a free feast, a free program, but only 10 people came out of, and there were seats for 300. But Prabhupada wasn't discouraged. He gave a nice lecture, a nice kirtan. They had good prasadam. And out of the 10 people that came to the program, one of them had a question. He was a young man from New York, and he asked Srila Prabhupada, what happens to somebody if they can't finish this process of yours that you're asking us to take? Is it a waste of their life that they become neither spiritually nor materially advanced? Which is interesting that this question was also asked. This is an intelligent question that Arjuna asked Krishna. Arjuna asked Krishna the same thing. What happens if somebody doesn't finish this process of bhakti yoga? They become a riven cloud without a residence here or there. So that man was Tamal Krishna Goswami. And Prabhupada answered him with the same answer that Krishna gave to Arjuna, that there's no loss or diminution in this process. That once begun, you'll eventually finish and go back to Godhead. Sometimes people ask me about devotees who have left ISKCON over the years. Since I've been in ISKCON since 1974, naturally I've seen a lot of turnover. I've seen people join, I've seen people leave, I've seen people join and not leave. I've seen people join and leave and come back. Sometimes more than once. Sometimes a bunch of times. But, so they say, why did people leave? I said, well, really, nobody really leaves once they begin the process of devotional service. Once you begin devotional service, then Krishna never forgets that. And as long as the goal is to become Krishna conscious, a person continues to make progress, even if they may fall down a little on the way. Like one time, Bhakti Charu Swami asked Prabhupada, what about all these devotees who've given up the practice of Krishna consciousness? And Prabhupada assured him, he said, don't worry, they won't be gone very long. So that's what Krishna told Arjuna, that once you begin the process of devotional service, it's just a matter of time. Anything that you do for Krishna will never be forgotten. It's kind of like if you're taking a train back to Godhead, everybody's on the train, and then sometimes when the train stops, somebody will get off the train, and the train leaves without them, and then they stay behind for a while. But eventually they get back on the train and catch up with everybody. So Prabhupada told Tamal Krishna Goswami that there's no loss. Eventually, Krishna will never forget, and by good association, you'll take up the process again. Hopefully, you don't commit so many offenses, because that's what really destroys our devotional service, is offenses to devotees. I've seen Prabhupada, if somebody fell down just into sense gratification and they weren't offensive, they could revive their devotional service quite easily. I remember one time in New York, a devotee, he was a sannyasi, and he ran off with a teenage brahmacharini, took some money with him, and disappeared and was gone for like a year. And he kind of just went out the window, for a little while. And he was living with this girl, and we weren't sure where he was, what he was doing. got out of control. Eventually, a year later, he shows up in Vrindavan, and he's shaved up and feeling repentant. And when he came before Srila Prabhupada in June 1977, and he was feeling bad over what he had done, and guess what Srila Prabhupada said as soon as he saw him? "Where's your wife?" So Prabhupada was just wanting to know, well, where's your wife? Why didn't you bring her? He was embarrassed to bring his wife. He was, he felt very bad that he'd given up Prabhupada's service, but Prabhupada was just warm and welcomed him back. And he said, you can live as Grihastra. You can keep on doing devotional service. You don't have to be a sannyasi anymore. You just have to just don't leave us, Prabhupada said. Don't leave us. And then Prabhupada wrote in a purport about Gajendra, how Gajendra was fighting with the crocodile. And because he was in the water, it was in the crocodile's favor. So it was better he be on the land. So you should serve Krishna from in the platform or the best situation that's favorable for devotional service for your particular case. So Prabhupada said that was a very intelligent question. Who was that boy? And then they said, well, we never seen him before. But then he was at this ranch. And then he joined Srila Prabhupada and became his disciples. So those two were initiated as Tamal Krishna and Vishnu Jan. And they were like brothers. They were very close friends. And Vishnu Jan Swami, Prabhupada gave him sannyas very soon after that. He had a wife and a daughter that weren't very. His wife wasn't very interested in becoming a devotee, and Vishnu Jan Swami wanted to be Prabhupada's direct servant. So he gave up that family and took to the renounced sort of life. Took sannyas. Tamal Krishna Goswami also became a sannyasi. Tamal Krishna Maharaj became the Sankirtan leader of ISKCON. First he was always a man of, he was Prabhupada's right-hand man. He became like Sarup Damodar to Lord Chaitanya. Wherever you see a picture of Srila Prabhupada, it's not unusual to see that Tamal Krishna Maharaj is also in that picture. Has anybody ever seen Tamal Krishna Maharaj in the picture of Prabhupada? He has like a little birthmark that makes him distinct, so you can always tell when he's in a picture. He was, I think Madhavisha said that you can't really talk about Prabhupada's pastime without including Tamal Krishna Maharaj. Tamal Krishna Maharaj's history was the president of Los Angeles. He became the Sankirtan leader in London. He went on to become Prabhupada's personal servant and secretary for many years. Whenever Srila Prabhupada would go and say, we need to go somewhere, that we meant him and Tamal Krishna Maharaj. Prabhupada went to Japan and got the books printed. He brought Tamal Krishna Maharaj. Prabhupada came to India in 1971 and started ISKCON in this country. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj was by his side the whole time. So, back up to 1969, after opening the temple in San Francisco, Shama Sundar and his wife Malati, Gurudas, Yamuna, Shama, and Mukunda Maharaj and Janaki, they went to England and they met the Beatles. And the Beatles had a real big impact on ISKCON because the Beatles are extremely popular. Prabhupada said they were like Gandharvas, and they had a magical musical ability, and became they actually changed the whole history of the world, the Beatles did. They created the rock and roll industry, and their music was popular everywhere, even in Russia, so much so that when the first devotee, when Shyama-Sundar went with Srila Prabhupada to Russia, they met the first Russian devotee because he was hoping that maybe they had some Beatles music, which wasn't allowed in Russia. And they said, and Shyama-Sundar said, well, I have the guru of the Beatles right here. How about that? So the Beatles, they took to chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and that was in 1969. So in 1970, George Harrison put on a big concert called the Concert for Bangladesh, which involved this place here. Bangladesh had a war. India invaded Bangladesh to try to save the Hindus from being killed by the Muslims. And many thousands of people ran away from the war, and they came here to Mayapur. And Rabbi Shankar was a sitar player, and he asked George Harrison for assistance. Let's put on a show, and then people can pay money, and then we'll use that money to feed people in Mayapur. Which is interesting how it was all connected. The Beatles became devotees, and then Rabbi Shankar was a friend of George Harrison, Bangladesh, Mayapur, put on a show called the Concert for Bangladesh. I came to ISKCON from this concert. It became a movie and played in my local town. And first it started with Rabbi Shankar performed first, and he was playing the sitar, and there was the sound of the tablas. There was this whoop sound, like, Madanga goes whoop whoop. So I heard that, and I was trying to figure out where it was coming from. I was looking at the different instruments, and I thought, whatever that is, I'm going to learn how to play it. I was 14 at the time, and I thought, that whoop sound, that's some kind of drum or something. And eventually I learned how to play Madanga and make that whoop sound. And then it was after Rabbi Shankar, George Harrison came on stage, and he started going into the intro of a song, and he leaned into the microphone and he said, Hare Krishna. And I heard that and I was just amazed. I was like, Hare Krishna. What was that? What language was that? What does that mean? Why do I keep on saying it? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. I went home and I kept saying Hare Krishna. It was some kind of magic to it. I got Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So I kept on thinking, and then I got more of George Harrison's music, and then I met the devotees in Portland, Oregon, and I went to the Sunday feast. In the Sunday feast, I realized that the Hare Krishna people were the real Christians, that they lived, that everything I knew about Jesus Christ, these people lived. The way they're vegetarian, the way they worship God every day, the purity, just the whole smell of the temple, the incense, the prasadam, everything seemed to me like true Jesus Christ, like Jesus Christ had sent me I finally found where I belong. So I was 16 at the time. Some devotees who were joining ISKCON at my age, and they had their parents would hire deprogrammers to try to take them away from ISKCON. But in my case, my parents were just saying, hey, please take him. So I moved into the temple, and Dinabandhu got permission from my parents so I could stay, even though I was underage. And then I saw a picture of these two effulgent personalities in a Back to Godhead magazine. It was Vishnu John Swami and Tamal Krishna Goswami. And the article was called The Radha Damodar Traveling Sankirtan Party. Come travel with us. So it was a joint article. I don't know where you'd find it nowadays, but it was in the Back to Godhead. I think it was October 1974, somewhere in there. And I read the article, and it talked all about how they decided to bring the temple to the people. So this is another. Tamal Krishna Maharaj contributed a lot to ISKCON. One thing he did was he bought this land that we're all on. He actually is the one who purchased the property in Mayapur, and he's the one who opened the temples in China, or ISKCON in China. If you're from China, he was the one who started that, and he started the idea of putting deities on a bus and taking the temple and doing traveling Sankirtan. Devotees bring in a bus, and we have so many buses here in Mayapur of traveling Sankirtan party that go out. They just came back the other day, had a glorious reception. So that was Tamal Krishna Goswami's brainstorm. And when I saw him and Vishnu Jan Maharaj next to the Radha Damodar deities that traveled with them, I just thought, I've got to be with that. That's my calling. So I got permission from the GBC, and I flew from Portland, Oregon to Gainesville, Florida in January 1975. When I got to the temple, Vishnu Jan Swami was out in front, and he had his band. You can look this up on YouTube if you ever want to listen to Vishnu Jan Swami. He's there with Vishnu Jan Swami bhajans on YouTube, and then it comes up. So he had what they did to do festivals was they had a little band of Indian music. They had a sitar, a tambura, Madanga, and Vishnu Jan Swami on the harmonium, Tamal Krishna Goswami on the Madanga, kartals, and an esaraj. An esaraj is a nice instrument. It's like a one-string violin. So they formed this little group, and they were doing performances all over. And that was my first darshan of Vishnu Jan Maharaj. He was playing on a rug with his band in front of the Gainesville temple. And then, so I joined the Radha Damodar party, and immediately became like, the program on Radha Damodar was a good morning program with Mangal Arati. We do everything just like they did in the temple, with Guru Puja and Srimad Bhagavatam class, and then Tranar Japa. And then we had a big, huge meal in the morning. And you're told to eat as much as you could and then a little bit more, because that was the only meal for the rest of the day. And then we start book distribution like 10 in the morning and go until 6 or 7 at night. It was a little later in the summer. And then come back, and then Vishnu Jan Swami would put pakoras in everybody's mouth as they came in the door. And it was quite strict. We had Tamal Krishna Maharaj we had more and more devotees join. The buses became from 1 bus to 5 buses. You might see the picture of that. There's a photograph of Prabhupada sitting in front of the Radha Damodar buses. Pretty famous picture. There's a copy of it behind Srila Prabhupada in Radha Madhava's temple here. If you go around the back and you see all the pictures, there's the pictures of the bus. I'm there in between the 2 dandas. And we're all there, 140 men it became. So we used to follow follow the sun, they said. When it got cold up north, then the buses would move south and do book distribution. When it got summertime, then the buses would go north. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj, at this point, he's 29 years old, and he's running this entire army of book distributors that's covering the whole United States. And he's got the map and he's sending the buses and the men, and they're going to every town and village in America, doing Sankirtan, Kirtan, and Prasadam, and book distribution. So we went and saw Srila Prabhupada in Atlanta in February 1975. We drove the bus all night, and that was when we all got to see Prabhupada for the first time. And Srila Prabhupada came in the door of the Atlanta temple after his morning walk, and it lit up the whole place. It was this bright orange effulgence, golden color that just was so beautiful when Prabhupada came in the door. And then I watched Prabhupada as he glided along into the temple room. This is for greeting the deities, and I noticed that Prabhupada's feet weren't quite touching the ground. He was sort of like a hovercraft, just like he was walking on water. And he was really fast. And that's another thing that amazed me when I first saw Prabhupada, was how fast he was. Because, when people get to be 80 years old, they have a tendency to slow down a little bit. And Prabhupada had some kind of magic youth there. He had more energy than all the young people that were trying to keep up with him. So he went into the temple room, the curtains opened, and I paid my obeisances, and Prabhupada's lotus feet were just right there in front of me. So sometimes when the temple room is crowded and you pay your obeisances and there's somebody's feet right there. So they were that close, so I just took a chance and grabbed his lotus feet for a couple seconds and held on for a moment. And he probably got up and he looked down to see who that was. I didn't seem to get in too much trouble for that. And then Prabhupada sat down and gave the lecture, and when he started talking about Lord Chaitanya, he started crying about the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, and it was famous how in Atlanta, Prabhupada went into like a samadhi for a moment. The tears from his eyes soaked the devotees who were nearby. And it was a great weekend. Srila Prabhupada, it was Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's appearance day. And it was the February 1975. Srila Prabhupada did Artik for Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Srila Prabhupada gave the Sunday feast lecture. He asked if there was any questions. I asked the question since I had a chance. I said, how can I perfect my devotional service? And Srila Prabhupada said, just chant Hare Krishna and everything else will come. It's very simple. Prabhupada also, he printed out the Paramakaruna song, Paramakaruna Pahundui Jana. And we all had a Xerox copy, and everybody was trying to sing along. And the Madunga player couldn't get the beat, because it was like a 1-2 beat. And we were all used to the 1-2-3 beat. So Prabhupada said, I'll play Madunga. So Prabhupada took the Madunga and he played whoop whoop, and again with the whoop thing, that sound that only Madungas and tablas can make. And he sang the song and gave us a translation and proceeded to also to do some more crying. Prabhupada was so overwhelmed with the mercy of Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya, Nitai Gaura Chandra, because this was 1975. Prabhupada had just come from a world tour, and at this point, ISKCON had grown to be the international society that it is now. Prabhupada started all alone, and then he is now, 1975 was a big year for Prabhupada. He opened the Krishna Balaram Mandir. There was a big, huge Gaur Purnima here in Mayapur. Prabhupada went to South America. He went to Australia. He went all over the place. He went to Africa. Srila Prabhupada was all over the world that year with the youth, like the energy of a young man. So Vishnujan Swami and our party, we continued doing Sankirtan. We all came together in July 1975 in Chicago, and Prabhupada initiated all of the Radha Damodar men in one sitting, 80 men in one initiation. And then he initiated all the other devotees the next day. So Sikhi-Maiti was in that initiation, and he didn't like his name that much, so Prabhupada had to preach to him that it's a good name. It's a personal associate of Lord Chaitanya. It was my turn. Prabhupada said, your name is Misra Bhagavan Das. Just chant Hare Krishna. Gave me my beads. It was one name after another. So many devotees got initiated. Govinda Dat. Many devotees that are still here with us. Vaisheshika Prabhu. So that was a big day. And Prabhupada, the Radha Damodar party went on to being the biggest book distribution phenomena up until March 1976. And I'm not sure, in one sense I can't tell you everything with references, because there was a lot of different theories, but Vishnujan Swami disappeared upon us. He was coming in contact with his wife, and she was drawing him back. And as a sannyasi, Vishnujan Swami was really an amazing personality. Sometimes people ask me, well, what was he like? I'd say, well, he was like, they describe Lord Chaitanya as a beautiful sannyasi. That's Vishnujan Swami was tall. He had a golden complexion. He had a voice, Prabhupada said, like a Gandharva. He'd wear this big tilak, and many people were attracted to ISKCON by his powerful personality. So, but he was starting to have pressure from his wife, and then we went to India. We came here to Mayapur in March 1976. Radha Damodar, being on the Radha Damodar party, when everybody was on parikram, we were sent to do book distribution at the front gate, doing Gitar Gans, Ek Rupya, Gitar Gan, all day long. So I felt privileged to be like an elite group. So on the Vishnujan Swami was becoming distraught, and he went to Srila Prabhupada on a morning walk, and he asked if Chota Haridas had done the right thing. Getting back to the beginning of our story, Chota Haridas left his body in the Ganga, and Vishnujan Swami was the kind of person that would rather die than give up sannyas and go back to being an ordinary householder. So he asked Prabhupada if that was the right thing to do. And Srila Prabhupada said yes, but then when Vishnujan Swami went away, then Prabhupada said, I am not like Lord Chaitanya, I don't expect this. Who would spread our movement if every time somebody fell down they jumped in the Ganga? We need devotees to keep on preaching and being Krishna conscious. If you fall down, you get back up. But Vishnujan Swami didn't hear any of that, and he vanished on us. So I remember we were trying to figure out where did Vishnujan Swami go. We knew that he didn't go back to America because he had left his passport, his danda, his shoes, and it was here in the Lotus building, and we're there was a big discussion of where could he have gone. They went to Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, it looks like he might have left and perhaps jumped in the Ganga. We don't know for sure. But Prabhupada said that, well, what if I give instructions and people don't follow them, what can I do? Because Prabhupada said we don't want devotees to do that. We want them to continue preaching, to keep on trying to be Krishna conscious. If you have trouble in Krishna consciousness, the only solution is to keep on pursuing Krishna consciousness. If you making offenses to chanting the holy name, the only solution is just keep on chanting the holy names. Don't never give up. Always pray for the mercy of Krishna, and the Lord will take us all back to Godhead. We just have to surrender to the order of the spiritual master, never give up, and always hope for the mercy of Guru and Gauranga. Jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you for coming. Any questions? Or?
So nice, Prabhuji, that you are one of the army of Radha Damodar party. It's very nice. Regarding Vishnu Swami, I was, so much inquisitive that what happened, how he disappeared, and this and that. So you have given some good information. So my point is that while Vishnu Swami disappeared from us, somebody saw him that he has blooped in Ganga or what happened? Any evidence or something?
Well, I've heard that he got assistance for some Brahmins, and they did a kind of a ritual, like where you go to drowning in the Ganga is somehow there's some kind of Vedic ritual apparently. All you from India might know more about that than I do. And that's just something I heard, that he had chanted mantras and then dived into the Ganga and went to the bottom with rocks and chains. I mean, there must have been something like that. I mean, otherwise how would such a story exist? Like, who could make that up, really? All I can say for sure is that he disappeared. That's what I saw. He was there in the morning program, and then we all went to breakfast, and while everybody was eating breakfast, he vanished. When we came back, we were looking for him in the Lotus building. I know he didn't go back to America, because his parents were asking us where he went. He didn't take his passport, so he couldn't have gotten out of the country. So it's a legend. All I know is that he was an era, like he was an amazing person. I really never seen anybody quite like him since. When he would speak, it would always be poetry. He would give classes. He was soft like a rose, but he also could be hard like a thunderbolt. Like one time, I sat down on this pillow in the Radha Damodar bus, and I was sitting there comfortably chanting japa. And Vishnu Swami came on the bus and looked at me. He said, "That's giant under seat, rascal." And I jumped out of that pillow. Or one time somebody was throwing rocks at the bus and trying to break the windows of the Radha Damodar bus. And Vishnu Swami came out with a pole. And he said, "Now you will die like a dog." And chased the man away. So Vishnu Swami could be, he was quite intense in so many ways. And when he would chant, it would charm everybody. He had his beautiful voice. And when he would take care of the deities, he would always be weeping. He used to bathe and cook for Radha Damodar. He loved those deities. He was always absorbed in the mood of Radharani. So, if you want to know more about Vishnu Swami, there's a book called The Radha Damodar Vilas by Vyasaki Prabhu. parts 1 and 2. I'm very happy that Vyasaki wrote those books because it gives people a history of Vishnujana Swami that didn't exist otherwise. I think that Vishnujana Swami definitely deserves to have had a book written about him. How he disappeared, well, there's theories, and you can come up with your own.
And one more thing, Prabhuji, little more. What does mean Mr. Bhagavan?
Misra Bhagavan, I had this name for 20 years before the Pandit finally told me what it meant. It means Lord Chaitanya. He's Bhagavan in the Misra family. And I thought, because my name was Michael before, like when I was introduced to Prabhupada, Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, "This is Bhakti Michael. He's joined our party at a young age." And Prabhupada looked at me and said, "Oh, very good." So I thought it was Misra. I thought it was Misra Bhagavan was Bhagavan Misra from the Chaitanya Charitamrita in reverse, so that it would go with, because a lot of times devotees, their name, the first letter of their legal name became the first letter of their initiated name. That's pretty common. So I thought it was Misra Bhagavan, but it was actually Bhagavan. I thought it was Bhagavan Misra, but it actually had a name, meaning in itself. That's what's nice about the association of devotees. There's so many things that devotees contribute. So in this case, it was a devotee who knew the Shastras enough to know what my name was, and he shared it with me. Yes, Prabhu.
Dandavat Pranam, Prabhuji, Hare Krishna. Thank you for your lecture. Prabhuji, Vishnujana Prabhuji, you had talked about that. So, did he get any chastisement from Srila Prabhupada? What is the story behind that he disappeared?
I was sitting with Hari Sauri, Satyadana, and Jananivas at Tamal Krishna Goswami's appearance day. And Satyadana said that Tamal Krishna Maharaj said that it doesn't look like Vishnujana Swami is coming back. Somebody's got to tell Srila Prabhupada it's not going to be me. And then Hari Sauri also said, yeah, it's not going to be me. So Satyadana got the task, and he went in and he told Srila Prabhupada what had happened from what we knew. And Prabhupada said that he didn't have to do that. I tell people what to do, and if they don't follow, then what can I say? And that was all. I kind of thought that Prabhupada would talk more about it, but I got it firsthand right from Satyadana just recently. So that was what Prabhupada said when he was informed. Tamal Krishna Maharaj would never talk about it after it happened. So we just understand that Vishnujana Swami was a great personality. He was very Krishna conscious. If he didn't go back to Godhead, he certainly became a demigod. In fact, Prabhupada said he was sang like a Gandharva, and Choda Haridas became a Gandharva and sang songs for Lord Chaitanya. I could theorize that Vishnujana Swami also returned to his position as a Gandharva and perhaps sang for Srila Prabhupada. That's just my take on it. But I know that wherever he went, he continued his Krishna consciousness, because Vishnujana Swami had attained love of God, love of Krishna, and will always be part of Prabhupada's pastimes. Wherever Prabhupada is now, I feel confident that Vishnujana Swami is there as well as Tamal Krishna Goswami. Yes, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I was wondering if you can share some Sankirtan stories back then with the Radha Damodar bus, and any realizations that you might share for back then, after the experience and right now. And what's life on the bus? I mean, I read the books, but it's always nice to hear from someone right now in front of me sharing that.
Are you Chinese?
I'm Chinese, but I was born in Malaysia.
Ni hao.
Ni hao.
Ma. Tamal Krishna Maharaj made the devotees in China, which is, that's a story. The day he was sent to China, Prabhupada told him, you have to go to China. If you don't, I'll just take away all your service, and then you have to stay here in Mayapur. So I got on the morning walk that day, and we went up on the roof of the Lotus building, and Prabhupada was walking backwards and addressed the crowd, the sannyasis and GBCs, and Prabhupada opened up his arms. He had his cane and his beads, and he was walking backwards, and he said, "You'll all be happy to know, Tamal is going to China." So up to then, we were on the Radha Damodar party from 1974 to 1976. Tamal Krishna Maharaj was an expert organizer, and he would see to every detail. So a day with the Radha Damodar party meant after a good, strong morning program, it was really good prasadam. And one thing, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he organized there was a winter menu and a summer menu. So the winter menu was cauliflower and potatoes and pea sabji with a lot of sour cream and ghee and butter. It was very rich. And then he had halava and hot milk. That was the winter menu. Then in the summer, it was the same sabji with a salad and what we call Visudev Swami nectar, which was made out of buttermilk, orange juice, and strawberries, and a lot of sugar. It was really quite good. I used to be able to drink 4 or 5 liters of it. And then we would be on book distribution all day, and you had to just keep going. And the devotees' scores were really huge, and we were sending all this. We were profiting. Each man was anywhere from $50 to $100 for each man. 140 men. Half of that was profit, and half of that profit came here to build Mayapur. We built the Lotus building. We built the Long building, the Conch building, Chakra building. We built the Chakra building. Prabhupada told Tamal Krishna Maharaj in January 1976 that I want you to build the Chakra building, and I want it done by Gaur Purnima. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj had 3 months to build that long building, and he actually got it most of it done. So there was a lot of pressure on us to work all day. It was just one person after another. We go in front of grocery stores, Kmarts, which we call Krishna Marts. Now they're called Walmarts, but they used to be called Kmarts. And we'd approach people as they came out. Vaisheshika Prabhu was responsible for coming up with the method, like he still is. He's like your reincarnation of book distribution. But basically just stopping people, showing them the book, asking them for a donation. We give them incense as an incentive. And it was hard work. That was one thing. It was ecstatic, but it was also quite austere. One time I goofed off. A devotee told me that, you can take a little break on Sankirtan and go to sleep inside the department store on a couch. So I tried that, and when I got back, I'd only sold 17 Back to Godheads that day and collected $17.50. So Tamal Krishna Goswami says, Misra Bhagavan, your Sankirtan results are unacceptable. Tomorrow it's going to be $100 and 100 back to Godheads, or you're off the party and you'll have to become a temple brahmachari, which was the greatest disgrace. So I really worked hard. And because I worked hard, then I came back, I had $98 and some change. And Goswami, he smiled and he said, all right, that's good enough. Because he knew that I didn't stop the whole day. And then there was 2 programs. There was Dial a Bhajan and Dial the Sauce. So if you're doing good on Sankirtan, you could call Tamal Krishna Maharaj and get Dial the Sauce. That way you get a little lecture about Krishna consciousness over the telephone. Or you could dial the bhajan. So I'd already had enough sauce, so I tried to dial the bhajan. So I called up, and Vishnu John Swami got onto the telephone, and I was in a telephone booth and putting money into it, and he was on the other end in another telephone booth, and he asked me, so what song do you want me to sing? What bhajan do you want to hear? So I said, oh, could you please sing this bhajan that you wrote the tune for, called Vrindavan, Vrindavan. And it was in the songbook. And Vishnu John Swami agreed, and he pulled the harmonium into the telephone booth, and he put the microphone down on the harmonium, and he sang me this song over the phone. Vrindavan Ramaya Sthana Divya Chintamanidam. You can also hear this on YouTube. So he sang me the song and gave me told me the translation. He said that it was a song about Vrindavan, where Radha and Krishna are on a golden throne within a lotus flower of 8 petals that are none other than the 8 chief gopis surrounding Sri Sri Radha and Krishna. And in that flood of laughter and joke, they address one another and enjoy great pastimes, and enjoy happiness in this life and in the next. This is perfect. So then he sang me the song, gave me the translation, and he said that there's a Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's a brahmachari named Akula Brahmachari. And wherever he went, Lord Chaitanya would manifest through him. So he said, you should be like that brahmachari, and wherever you go today, whoever you meet, let the mercy of Lord Chaitanya flow through you and benedict all the people that you come in contact with. So, thank you very much for coming. Hare Krishna. Dasvadanya.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Pajalsta.
Thank you very much for sharing wonderful pastimes. Thank you so much. So we thank to Prabhu by chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra once. Louder please. Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama Rama Rama.